Hello, my name is Jenna, and I'm here with the wonderful Victoria Schwab, and we are at Parnassus Books in Nashville celebrating A Conjuring of Light.
Oh man,
That's exciting. If you don't know this book, this is the finale for A Darker Shade of Magic, and if you haven't read A Darker Shade of Magic, what are you doing with your life? Go pick it up right now.
But if you wanted to wait until all 3 books were out,
I actually have a friend who she's like, no, I can finally marathon it.
Yeah.
So if that's you, this is your opportunity. This is a question I feel like a lot of finales get, but did you always know where the story was going to go?
yeah, so I actually write the endings first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for all of my projects. So I knew when I started Darker Shade, both how Darker Shade was going to end and how Conjuring was going to end.
Wow.
Not necessarily like down to the exact framing, dialogue, all of that, but I knew where all of the characters were going to end up.
Yeah.
And I do that so that I can figure out where they need to begin. So for me, writing is a rewinding process.
Yeah.
I figure out the end, I figure out the landing, and then I reverse it back so that I know where they start.
Yeah. So was it difficult to write that ending?
It was.
Even though you knew where it was going?
There's one character that did not end up where I expected them to end up, and it threw me for 6 months. I resisted it, and then
Can
I
you
was
tell us
no.
which? Okay. All right. I tried. It's fine.
No spoilers.
How did you develop the Arnesian language? Because
Oh,
that
man.
one, like, every time I reread it, I'm just like, how? Like, I don't get it.
Well, my editor and I built it together,
Yeah.
and we built it structurally the way you would build any language from the ground up. We started with the grammatical framework, so every phrase that's used or every descriptor follows the exact same framework. Like we had to decide, do adjectives go before nouns?
Yeah.
So we had to pick our system, and then we kept a running glossary. So every time a new word got added to the system, it got added to our story Bible and we would reuse it 2 or 3 times to show that this wasn't just a one-off thing where we had just made up a word. We wanted it to feel like a comprehensive language, while at the same time feeling like something you didn't have to memorize in order to understand the story.
Yeah.
It's used as flavor. It's used as seasoning in the book.
Did you have any inspiration for it, or was it just like, whatever happened?
I wanted something fluid.
Yeah.
Like I knew that, for instance, the Veskins in Red London's world have almost a Gallic. Like they have a harsh edge to theirs, and I wanted and on the other side the Faroans have like a very susurrant.
Yeah.
I think I made that word up, but there's a word that's very much like that word that is the right word. And so I needed the Arnesian language to be somewhere in between.
Which of your characters do you identify with the most from A Darker Shade?
It's so hard, right? Because every character is a little bit a piece of you. And so Lila's my aspirational character. She's the character I want to be. Kel is probably the character I most am.
Yeah.
Holland is like my darker parts,
Yeah.
and Rye is like it's somewhere between Rye and Kel. Like Rye is kind of my heart, and Kel is my head. You know, like Kel is the more neurotic one.
Right.
Rye is the one that has more longing, and so they're all different pieces of me, just kind of fractured out. I wish I was Lila. Lila's the one I'm probably least like.
So did you have a favorite one to write?
Holland.
Holland?
Yeah.
I feel like that's out of left field.
Because he was the most interesting one for me to write. Rye was the hardest because he's a performer, and so when you're writing a character who performs compulsively depending on his audience, it's really hard to figure out who he actually is underneath that. Lila, I knew exactly what she was going to do.
Yeah.
Every situation you can predict what Lila's going to do, which is usually the wrong thing.
Right.
But Holland, like, I love long con characters. I love characters that evolve over the course of something.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's Vicious and it's a single book and it's Victor evolving over the course of it, or whether it's Holland, which is more of like a series game. I knew from the beginning that Holland was going to be more complicated than Darker Shade depicts him, and so for me that was fun.
My specific question, and this is like really deep, but is Lila queer?
The way that, so I get asked this a lot, and it's hard because I don't want to be flippant.
Right.
The only, like, hardcore straight character in that series is probably King George.
Oh my god.
Like, which is to say that the one major difference that I wanted to take, even stripping away Grey London and the fact that there was a realistic foundation for that, I wanted to treat sexuality differently.
Yeah.
And so because this is a world in which magic is the most important aspect and power, I let that be my stand-in for sexuality, with the idea that I'm a firm believer in fluidity of sexuality and the idea that you fall in love with a person first and a gender second, and that aspects in our society are the ones, like, are the things which kind of make us think of it as binary, but it's not binary.
Right.
And so for my characters, it simply has never been binary.
Yeah.
You know, that like Kel and Rye are raised in a world where it's absolutely not binary. What's important is not who you sleep with, it's your power.
Yeah.
And when Rye is distressed and when he feels impotent and when he feels othered, it's not because he likes both sexes, you know? It's because, or both genders, it's because he doesn't have magic.
Yeah.
Right? So I wanted it to be a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
So to that end, Lila would happily be with a woman if that woman was powerful enough and floated her boat, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's a complicated thing. Everyone in that everyone in that series would be with the person they wanted to be with.
Yeah.
You know? With the sole exception of one character who does show that in some ways Rye's freedom is privilege. You know, Rye can do what he wants because he's a prince. Another character can't necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
And we see that over the course of the series that there are boundaries in the society. It's just that what the lens that we're getting for Red London is kind of a privileged one. But on the whole, it's safe to assume that all of my characters are canonically queer in that, like, they're in so much as they're not binary.
So this kind of leads into my next topic, which is we've been talking a lot about diversity in books on the internet, like this whole year and the past year, and I know you identify, I think, as bisexual. So to you, what does diversity in books mean?
So this is a really hard topic right now, and again, I don't want to simplify it, and I'm going to have to for the purpose of this video. For me, it's the idea that I can't depict everyone's narrative, but I want everyone to be able to see themselves in the book. Right? So there's a difference between having a presence in a novel, having characters who are racially different, who are sexually different, who are anything that you would consider left of center or right of center in the classic sense. And I can't depict everyone's story.
Right.
You know, I can write Rye, and I can write him with an intimate knowledge that, like, I really hate it when queer people get put on a pedestal and have to be like, the best queer.
Right.
Like, Rye is super problematic, but it's not because he's queer, it's because he's 20 years old and he's a prince and he's spoiled, right?
Yeah.
But for instance, like, I would never, and like, the most of Red London is not white. But I'm not writing about their not whiteness. I'm not writing about their race.
Right.
That's not my narrative. What I can do is make sure that I show a variety of skin colors, a variety of philosophies and of sexualities, and show that they all have a place in my world. So it's that really hard balance. I think people think it has to be all one or all the other. Like, you either have to write from a point of view of someone that you're not, or you need to not have that person in the book at all. Whereas the most important thing is having them in the book, making sure that readers can see themselves at all hierarchic places in the novel, just as not as some token throwaway, but as someone who is central to the story. And you can have characters be central to the story without trying to write a narrative that you really shouldn't be writing because it's not yours to tell.
I know another thing that you talk about a lot is mental illness, because you deal with mental illness. How has your experience with mental illness kind of played into your writing?
I always joke, and I have to joke sometimes about it. I joke it's the deal that you make creatively. I don't know, it's my brain, right? So I don't think I would be who I am. I don't think I would be the writer that I am without it, only because I've never been anyone else. Like, I've always had severe anxiety. I've always had really circuitous thought patterns and kind of, but like, also having circuitous thought patterns is one of the ways that I work through plot and story. And so I'm never trying to turn mental illness into some kind of like blessing or advantage in any way, but I've only ever known how to live with it, not live without it. And so for me, it's an integral part of who I am, and therefore it's an integral part of my process. Do I envy people who don't feel that way, or like envy people who feel just like happy and sane all the time? Sure. But I mean, I don't know what it would be like if I were in a different industry. This is the only one that I have. For me, it gets in my own way just because I can't always really disengage from myself. I can't get enough distance from myself. And I'm lucky enough to have people in my life who can be like, this is the part where you step back now and like try and get some distance and assess it from the outside, or like, as my editor said to me today, for God's sakes, please breathe. Like, go do something. So it's hard only because I don't know how to disassociate from mental health. It's just it's more like my journey as an adult has been learning to live healthfully with it. I was gonna say live with it, but like I'm just trying to like be my healthiest self. Yeah. And it's hard, especially as an author when you're touring and you're promoting, and that's something that I'm severely uncomfortable with, while at the same time wanting to see readers. And so it's hard. I usually have like on average like one total breakdown per tour, but I usually make it about a week into tour before it happens. And one of the reasons I've been so open and so honest with readers about it is because I want them to understand if something did go wrong. The worst thing I would want to have or not want to have happen is someone come to an event and me not be feeling well, and them to take that as me somehow not enjoying their presence, or I would never want a reader to be disappointed by one of my events, but that's also very scary and out of my control. If I'm having if I'm sick, I remember doing a tour stop in New York last year. It was my birthday and it was like 300 people, and I was having such severe panic that it was like I was trying not to throw up. Like I was like, just get through the signing line and then you can go throw up, which I did. But I was so terrified of people seeing that I didn't feel well, and taking that as something. So I actually it's selfish. One of the reasons that I am very open about mental illness is so that people won't take it personally if I start to feel ill, if something starts to go wrong. Because I try very hard to get out and to promote despite that, but it is a continuous struggle. It's a continuous inner dialogue that's happening at all times.
So is there a book or a character that you haven't written that you feel accurately represents your experience, a book that you're this is V if V were a book?
Yeah, but it's nonfiction as well, which is kind of weird, right? There's a book called Furiously Happy.
I freaking love that book so much.
So Jenny Lawson, the bloggess, is amazing, but the way that she talks about creativity and mental illness in Furiously Happy, I have never connected with anything that much. That and a book called Lab Girl, which is also nonfiction. It's a biologist, but she also talks about thought process and ties everything into kind of the natural world and very metaphysical and metaphorical at the same time. So the characters I connect with tend to be real people. But Furiously Happy, I read it while I was on tour last year. It was the book that I needed. I think it was the only thing that held me together a little bit while I was on tour. Because tour is an incredible blessing, but it is also one of the most overwhelming things that an introvert with severe anxiety can do. So if you've not read Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson, it doesn't matter if you're a creative or not a creative or whatever, that book.
I always ask this to any author I interview. What's a piece of advice that you wish someone had given you when you were starting out this journey of being an author?
You can't fix a blank page. And it sounds simplistic and trivial, but when you're starting out, when I say starting out, I still mean every time I sit down to write a first draft, it is an exercise in not quitting. That is what my uphill the entire time I'm drafting is, what can I do to stop myself from quitting? And so anything that you can do to stop yourself from quitting. And so for me, that's writing the ending first. That's getting something down on paper. I am also not physically capable of writing the crappy first draft though, because so I edit as I go, but I write that ending first because I'm much less likely to quit if I have an ending down. So that's what I probably would have told teenage me, who felt like she could never finish anything, was finish it first, and then go back and write the rest leading up to that ending.
We are gonna do a lightning round. Okay. 1 minute on the clock.
I feel so much pressure.
All right, how do you like your tea?
Black.
Okay, favorite Hamilton song to rap?
That is my phone, I am so sorry. Favorite Hamilton song to rap? Oh my goodness. That is very hard. Either The Room Where It Happens. No, I'm not. It's not the one that's Guns and Chips. Guns and Chips.
Okay, what are you currently reading?
I'm currently reading Crooked Kingdom by Lila Bard.
What is your Myers-Briggs?
INTJ.
What's your one favorite book from 2016?
One favorite book from 2016? Alexander Chee's The Queen of the Night.
What's your Patronus?
A winter fox.
What's your favorite dessert?
Chocolate. Dark chocolate.
Place you want to visit the most that you haven't been yet?
Tokyo.
Okay, what's your zodiac star sign?
Cancer.
Name one thing on your bucket list.
Learn Japanese.
Okay, what's your favorite children's movie? Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you.
I highly recommend all of these books. You guys have to go read them if you haven't. They're so good. But thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.